China has mountains so strange that after just one look, you may ask yourself, does this place really exist on Earth? They are not just high, but so unusual that they seem to belong to another world. There, red cliffs rise like giant walls, making the land look as if it has been torn open. Above the sea of clouds, sharp peaks, steep stone steps, and ancient temples appear in places where building anything seems almost impossible. In some places, roads cut straight through the mountainside, while in others, temples cling to the cliffs as if floating in the air. This is a journey through the strangest mountains in China, where the deeper you go, the more nature feels like a world that should not be real. Dangxia Mountain is where red sandstone cliffs turn Guangdong's mountain terrain into a landform colored from within. Covering nearly 300 square kilometers, it is the largest and most dramatic red sandstone landscape in the province. The deep red color comes from iron oxidation hidden inside ancient rock layers, not from a surface coating. Because of this mineral composition, the cliffs can change color according to humidity and the angle of sunlight. The area also contains two giant sandstone formations shaped very closely like human reproductive organs. Many cliffs that look massive from afar are actually thin stone slabs left after erosion, with long, curving rock bands like giant spines wrapping around the rugged terrain. Huangshan is known as one of the most majestic mountains under heaven, located in Anhui Province, China. It is a geological masterpiece filled with sharp granite pinnacles, rising among ancient twisted pine trees, growing directly from bare rock cracks. Seas of clouds frequently surge around the peaks, hiding the depths below and making the pathways appear suspended in open space. To reach this landscape, people carved more than 60,000 stone steps directly into the vertical cliffs. On many steep sections, iron chains anchored into the rock provide the only handhold, forcing climbers to press against the cliff face and move almost on all fours. On both sides of the route, there is almost no buffer ground, only a direct drop into a sea of clouds with no visible bottom. Wudang Mountain is located in Hubei province and is famous as the sacred center of Taoism, as well as the birthplace of Tai Chi. At its highest point stands the Golden Pavilion, a structure cast entirely from gilded bronze and exposed to constant mountain storms. Whenever lightning strikes the roof directly, fireballs can appear around the building, yet the pavilion remains intact and continues to shine. The most famous feature is Longtu Incense, a dragon-shaped rock outcrop extending directly above a deep abyss. For centuries, pilgrims have crawled along this narrow stone ridge to burn incense and offer prayers. Beneath them lies an empty drop with no visible bottom, where every movement across the cold rock becomes a test of courage and height. Yandang Mountain is the remnant of a supervolcano that collapsed 120 million years ago, leaving flat vertical rock faces that look as if they were cut straight across by a giant blade. Its volcanic geology makes the rock surfaces smooth, nearly 90 degrees steep, and almost without natural ledges for support. Between the massive cliffs, narrow cracks form wind corridors that are constantly covered in fog. Along the climbing route, walkers face abysses hundreds of meters below their feet while stepping on small, U-shaped iron bars drilled directly into the rock face. To connect one peak to another, the only infrastructure is narrow cable, stayed bridges or glass bridges crossing the fractures. Especially, the site features performances where people suspend themselves and ride bicycles across a single cable stretched between two mountain peaks, an intangible cultural heritage suspended hundreds of meters above the ground. Tianzu Mountain is a strange meeting point between fairyland-like scenery and dramatic rock terrain hidden among floating seas of clouds. True to its name, meaning sky pillar, the main peak is a massive monolithic granite block, sharp and rising into the sky like a stone sword. Instead of gentle rolling hills, the landscape is filled with isolated vertical rock pinnacles and giant boulders resting in unbelievable balance. The route to the summit is a chain of narrow, steep stone steps carved tightly into the hard cliff face. From the valley below, sudden gusts strike upward against the slippery rock surface, constantly testing the balance of walkers. This grand but psychologically demanding terrain helps Tianzhu Mountain preserve its wild and silent character. Located in Guizhou Province, Mount Fanjing is described as a place where people must spend all their courage to reach the gate of heaven. At the summit, the Red Cloud's golden summit rises into the sky like a rock pillar split from top to bottom by a deep fissure. This split creates two parallel stone pinnacles at nearly 2,500 meters, connected by a narrow arched stone bridge suspended in open space. To reach the summit, visitors must hold iron chains and climb thousands of steep stone steps. The path follows the boundary between a vertical cliff on one side and a bottomless abyss on the other, surrounded by screaming mountain winds and a terrifying empty void. In such dangerous terrain, one question remains: how did ancient builders carry heavy materials up here to build the two temples that still stand today? Daeju Mountain is defined by a cliffside monorail fixed directly into the vertical sandstone terrain above a fog-covered gorge. This 11.8-kilometer route has more than one-third of its track running along the cliff, carrying cabins between 850 and 1,150 meters above the ground. One side of the cabin nearly presses against the cold rock surface, while the other side opens directly over the deep void of the valley. The mountain has almost no gentle slopes, only split vertical cliffs, enclosing the swirling water at the bottom of the gorge. Before reaching the train, visitors also pass through a steep cable car system pulled close to the cliff face. The Hanging Monastery is a wooden temple that has remained suspended on a cliff edge for 1,500 years, challenging ordinary ideas about gravity. The structure is anchored into natural rock recesses of Mount Heng, where 40 wooden chambers hang above a sloping cliff at a height of about 75 meters. The exterior support columns appear as thin as chopsticks, but the main load-bearing system relies on wooden beams driven deep into the rock face. The corridors connecting the buildings are less than 1 meter wide and produce creaking sounds beneath each step. Low and narrow railings leave the open drop constantly present beside visitors. To protect this fragile structure, the number of people allowed on the suspended walkways is strictly controlled. Mount Hua is famous as one of the most dangerous mountains in the world, where the walking route is forced directly onto steep cliff faces. The harshness of this mountain comes from hand-carved paths cut into the rock wall and plank sections suspended beside the abyss. At more than 2,000 meters, many sections are only thin wooden planks about 30 centimeters wide, fixed directly into the nearly vertical granite wall. Outside the path, there is no solid floor or railing protecting walkers from the empty drop. Mountain winds constantly scream through the rock gaps, forcing climbers to press against the cold cliff and grip iron chains with every step. On the summits, the standing space is extremely limited and ends abruptly at the sharp cliff edge. Laojian Mountain is a fairyland-like place that rejects every known safety boundary and is known as one of the most sacred Taoist sites. At more than 2,200 meters, 3 golden palaces do not stand on flat plains, but rest precariously on 3 sharp marble peaks, rising straight into the sky. At this elevation, surging cloud waterfalls often swallow the cliff edge corridors, blurring the thin boundary of the walkway. To reach the summit, people must cross a network of walkways stretching for dozens of kilometers, fixed tightly to the outer side of the steep limestone cliffs. In winter, Laojian Mountain reaches its most extreme beauty, but also becomes its harshest. When ice and snow cover the steep stairs and cliffside paths, every step requires full effort to maintain balance. Minju Mountain begins with 12 main peaks, arranged in a large arc around the deep gorge below. Within this terrain, many slopes are cut flat, like giant stone faces, exposing smooth vertical cliffs behind dense fog. The deep green bamboo forests and hanging vegetation only reach the fracture edge before stopping at the 90-degree cliff. Here, the Qingyun Plank Road clings directly to the mountainside at an altitude of 1,700 meters. This route stretches for thousands of meters and is fixed with steel bolts and concrete foundations drilled straight into the cliff. Every step on the narrow path places walkers between the cold rock wall and the fog-covered void below. Mount Taiyun redefines the limit of a structure by placing an ancient temple on a sharp rock peak piercing through the clouds at 1,585 meters. The entire building clings to a ledge smaller than 6 square meters, with 3 sides dropping straight into 90-degree fractured cliffs. With no wide foundation or safe setback, the temple survives by gripping the cliff edge for more than 500 years. Despite violent winds and earthquakes, this small structure has never been thrown from its position suspended between earth and sky. Every year, tens of thousands of people still climb to this place to light incense on that fragile boundary. In winter, snow and ice cover the sandstone cliffs and turn the ascent into a slippery surface. Wangxian Valley completely breaks the idea that houses can only be built on flat ground. Here, a 90-degree granite cliff, rising more than 110 meters above the valley floor, becomes a giant wall used to hang an entire town in mid-air. Ancient houses, suspension bridges, and walkways are all fixed directly into the vertical cliff surface. To explore the valley, visitors must walk on wooden plank paths hugging the cliff edge directly above the roaring waterfalls below their feet. The enclosed deep gorge traps fog and water vapor from the waterfalls, keeping the wooden and stone surfaces wet and slippery. At night, Thousands of lanterns light up across the layered houses, turning the mountainside into a hanging picture in the darkness. The Jinshan Hanging Temple does not cling to the ground, but hides deep inside a hollow cave in a red Daxia sandstone cliff. This 4-story temple is pressed into the cave like an architectural mass attached to a fracture of the mountain. In front of the structure, the gorge opens straight downward, turning every wooden corridor into a suspended boundary between rock and empty space. The most haunting detail is the single wooden trunk braced against the cliff, placing the entire sense of balance on one fragile support. As you cross the only plank path, every vibration of the wooden floor makes the depth ahead feel clearer. If this walkway were cut off, people would be trapped between the cliff and the gorge with no way to retreat. Mount Taibai does not need winter to be covered in snow, because even in mid-June, its summit remains white, while the mountain base is still trapped in summer heat. Known as the June Snow Mountain, it creates an extreme weather boundary where intense summer conditions and sub-zero snowstorms can be only minutes apart. At roughly 3,500 meters, the ancient glacial lakes are surrounded by boulders and ice, yet their waters remain crystal clear throughout the year. As the highest point of the Qinling Range, Mount Taibai forms the watershed boundary that separates the basins of two of China's largest rivers. Across its slopes, vegetation changes noticeably with every gain in elevation, creating a layered biological fortress. When dense fog and screaming winds engulf the mountain, the trail nearly disappears as visibility shrinks to only a few meters. Drak Yerpa sits nearly 5,000 meters above sea level, a place where people willingly leave behind the security of solid ground. It is one of the highest networks of monasteries and meditation caves in the world, hidden within the thin air of the Tibetan Plateau. Instead of spreading across level terrain, its shrines and caves are embedded into natural fractures along towering cliff faces. Some structures project outward above the edge of the abyss, while others disappear deep into cold and shadowy rock chambers. Against the grey stone walls, small white and blood-red buildings stand out as fragile marks suspended above vast empty space. With no cable cars or mechanical assistance, the only way to reach the site is by pushing through slippery mountain trails until nearly every reserve of strength has been exhausted. Shuangta Mountain is where two giant sandstone pillars rise straight from the valley, lifting two ancient brick towers to a position almost separated from the ground. On top of these vertical stone columns, the two structures more than 1,000 years old still remain, even though the cliffs below are smooth and almost without natural footholds. What makes this site a mystery is the absence of clear traces of stairs, trails, or any ancient access route leading to the summit. After centuries of exposure to wind and rain, at that isolated height, the southern tower is now severely damaged. Although it stands near residential areas, the site still feels like a structure hanging beyond human reach. The remaining question is how ancient people carried building materials to those almost unreachable stone summits. Jurong Peak is the highest point among the 72 peaks of Mount Heng, rising at roughly 1,300 meters. From this position, a 360-degree view opens directly over the fractured cliff network beneath your feet. The summit's surface exposes granite eroded by storms over millions of years, leaving deep cracks running through the rock mass. To reach the highest point, visitors must follow long stone steps, curving along the mountainside through fog and strong wind. The higher the route climbs, the heavier each step becomes because of the exposed stone surface and the open void beside it. The final point is Jurong Temple, a small structure attached to the edge of the highest rock outcrop among the clouds. Mount Ime does not begin with gentle mountain slopes, but with cliffs that are abruptly cut into the landscape at elevations above 3,000 meters. The area around the Golden Summit is often covered by thick clouds, making it resemble an island suspended above the land, while concealing the true depth of the fractured cliffs below. At the highest point, a giant golden statue rises through the clouds and serves as the most recognizable landmark on the mountain. To reach this place, visitors must climb more than 60,000 stone steps attached to the mountainside, one of the longest and most physically demanding artificial climbing routes in the world. During winter, the surrounding forest turns white, while the exposed stairways disappear beneath layers of freezing snow. These conditions are part of what makes Mount Ime a dual heritage site, where dramatic geology and Buddhist architecture exist together on the cliff faces. Mount Juhua rises on 99 giant stone lotus peaks, where ancient temples cling unevenly to almost vertical cliff faces. The terrain here is split by narrow ridges, steep stone steps, and paths that trace high mountain slopes through thick clouds. To reach this sacred place, pilgrims must cross tens of thousands of ancient stone steps, with slopes ranging from 70 to 80 degrees. Many sections hang within a dense sea of clouds, making each step feel like crawling along the edge of open space. The boundary between peaceful temples and fog-covered ravines is sometimes only one unstable step apart. At the highest point, Tiantai Temple grips a narrow rock outcrop, projecting into the air, with its front facing directly toward the deep abyss below. Wulanhada Volcano Geopark is a Mars base camp on Earth, where a rare young volcanic complex lies exposed and isolated in the vast grassland. From above, the black volcanic craters open deep, like giant hollow pits carved into the ground. The slopes are made of light and porous pumice and volcanic scoria, standing in an open plain with no barriers, so they are often hit by strong gusts of wind. Many volcanoes were heavily mined before being protected, leaving huge cuts into the mountain cores and exposing the inner geological structure. Intact volcanic cones such as Volcano Number 5 still preserve deep funnel-shaped craters like natural basins. Against the dark scoria ground, visitors in pure white astronaut suits make each unsteady step look like a scene from another planet. Meiji Mountain rises alone from a green forest, completely separated from the surrounding gentle mountain ranges. On its smooth cliff face, nearly 200 caves of different sizes are carved deep into the rock, forming honeycomb-like openings attached to the vertical mountainside. This exposed terrain still preserves a refined collection of ancient clay statues, with painted layers surviving for more than 1,600 years. To move around the cliff, visitors must cross zigzag wooden plank paths fixed directly into the rock and suspended up to about 80 meters above the ground. Along these narrow corridors, the height and the empty space below become clear with every step. In winter, white snow covers the landscape, making the isolated rock mass stand out even more within the frozen forest. Jinfo Mountain belongs to the South China Karst World Natural Heritage, but its strongest feature lies in terrain cut by giant geological fractures into vertical plateau edges. Because of its table mountain structure, the area has almost no gentle slopes, only cliffs dropping straight into fog-covered valleys. To move around the mountain, visitors must step onto the Juebi Plank Road, a kilometer-long corridor anchored by steel beams drilled directly into the cliff. This walkway hangs at an altitude of about 2,000 meters, placing walkers close to the cold rock face and the deep open void below. From the cliff edge, the mountain surface looks like a smooth basalt cut, falling directly into the abyss. When winter covers the forest with white snow, the suspended planks quickly turn into a slippery surface. Mount Tai confronts climbers with an ancient stone route forced directly up the mountainside through more than 7,000 continuous steps. These sandstone stairs have been worn smooth by millions of footsteps from emperors and pilgrims over many centuries. Higher on the mountain, dense clouds often engulf the summit, erasing the surrounding chasms and leaving only sharp rock pinnacles rising above a white sea of mist. Honored as the foremost of China's 5 great sacred mountains, the mountain is also lined with ancient temple complexes attached to the rocky slopes. The most demanding section contains more than 1,600 steps within less than 1 kilometer, with gradients reaching 70 to 80 degrees. In many places, climbers must grip iron chains with both hands and press tightly against the cliff face to pull themselves upward. Baishishan is famous for a forest of pure white marble peaks rising straight into the sky, creating one of the most unusual geological landscapes in China. On both sides of these mountains are cliff walls that remain almost perfectly parallel before dropping more than 800 meters into the abyss without any buffer below. The fog here does not drift slowly across the peaks, but surges through the sharp rock fractures, capable of hiding the entire landscape within seconds. Baishishan is also known for its cliffside infrastructure, especially the transparent glass bridges drilled directly into the vertical mountain walls. When standing on them, the ground disappears and is replaced by an open drop of nearly 2,000 meters with clouds floating beneath your feet. Only a sheet of glass a few inches thick separates walkers from the abyss below. Mount Mian is one of the few places where deep canyons and massive ancient architectural complexes exist directly on cliff faces. Here, temples are not built on mountaintops, but carved deep into rock recesses, making them appear as if the mountain itself is swallowing them whole. The most remarkable structure is Daluo Palace, a 13-story Taoist complex built along an overhanging cliff face, creating a massive structure in nearly vertical terrain. Exploring the mountain requires moving across uneven rock ledges and outdoor zigzag iron stairways. These walkways have no supporting columns reaching the ground and are anchored directly into the cold cliff surface. On the highest cliffs, local people still preserve the tradition of descending on ropes from the summit to hang bronze bells in dangerous rock crevices as a form of prayer. The Lashan giant Buddha is the largest stone Buddha statue in the world, clinging to the thin boundary between a steep mountain and deep rivers. Standing 71 meters tall, the structure is carved deep into the vertical Lingyun cliff, turning a dangerous natural rock face into a massive spiritual structure. The instep of the Buddha alone is wide enough for 100 people to sit at the same time. The porous and easily weathered Lingyun cliff made carving easier, but it also leaves the entire rock mass exposed to hidden landslide risks. During 90 years of excavation, tens of thousands of tons of fallen rock filled parts of the river confluence below and reduced the violent whirlpools at the foot of the cliff. To reach the statue, visitors must follow a narrow zigzag path carved into the rock face, close to the slippery cliff edge descending toward the river. Gao Yiling stands out with giant red rock ridges, known as the Natural Great Wall, stretching for many miles like a fortress sculpted by nature. From above, the entire rock complex does not have ordinary sharp peaks, but curves and connects like a giant sleeping dragon. The sandstone cliffs here are remarkably smooth, and in some sections there is almost no topsoil or vegetation covering the ridge. Beneath the smooth cliffs is a system of deep and silent lakes, making the height and open space below even more visible. The path along the rock ridge is extremely narrow, where one moment of lost focus, a sudden strong wind, or one slip on the smooth stone surface can put walkers in danger. Would you choose to stand far away and look back, or dare to walk on the back of this dragon? Guoliang Tunnel is always listed among the harshest roads in the world, where even one small steering mistake offers almost no chance to recover. The entire 1.2-kilometer tunnel was hollowed out from inside a 90-degree vertical cliff, forming a rough and dark stone corridor through the mountain. More than 30 openings of different sizes face directly toward the cliff edge, bringing in light while exposing the deep valley outside. Inside the tunnel, some sections suddenly narrow, the rock ceiling drops low, and blind, sharp turns prevent drivers from seeing what lies ahead. At the narrowest section, when two vehicles meet, their wheels must move close to the cliff edge to pass the hidden bend. Guliang village was once almost isolated until 13 villagers spent 5 years carving this survival route through the cliff by hand. Sangqingshan, located in Jiangxi Province, China, is a World Heritage landscape famous for its forest of sharp granite pillars rising from a sea of clouds. The entire mountain is formed by towering stone spires thrusting upward from mist-filled valleys, resembling a giant, natural field of spikes. The most famous is a cobra-shaped granite pillar, standing 128 meters tall, with sections narrowing to only 7 meters wide. Across this fragmented terrain, dozens of kilometers of plank walkways are drilled and anchored directly into smooth cliff faces at an average elevation of 1,600 meters. The weight of every visitor rests entirely on beams embedded in the rock, while below lie vertical drops. When powerful winds surge upward from the valley and shake the narrow bridges beneath your feet, would you still have the confidence to keep walking? Tiger Leaping Gorge in Yunnan feels like a surreal dimension where nature displays its most illogical power. This landscape is trapped between two snow mountains rising above 5,000 meters, where the Jinsha River is forced through sections only about 20 to 30 meters wide between vertical cliff walls. During the rainy season, the river carries huge amounts of sediment and turns into a violent brown mass that continuously crashes against the cliffs. After storms pass, many sections of water become clear blue, creating a completely different appearance. Unlike rivers that can be used for transport, the current here creates an absolute forbidden zone for every kind of watercraft. On narrow trails clinging to the cliff walls, People can look straight down at the compressed torrent rushing beneath their feet.